You too. Thanks, everyone.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, October 22nd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and here they go again. Donald Trump and Joe Biden set to square off in an hour in the final presidential debate. But as Nadia Romero tells us, a new effort is being made to diffuse the disruptions.
Former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump meeting on stage for the first time since this chaotic scene in Cleveland.
And that gives you socialized totally.
President Trump, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Looking to avoid a repeat, the Commission on Presidential Debates now says they will mute each candidate's mic, allowing their opponent 2 uninterrupted minutes for each of the 6 key issues on the docket.
We think that this decision is in the best interest of the people of the United States.
As for how the president will respond,
the topics themselves, I'd say he's going to answer those topics, but he's also going to, frankly, answer the questions he wants to.
And in a preview of what issues could be front and center, President Trump was asked about a potential second term in an interview with 60 Minutes.
What do you priority now is to get back to normal, get back to where we were, to have the economy rage and be great with jobs and everybody be happy. And that's where we're going.
Biden, meanwhile, could be asked about potential court expansion in the wake of the rush to fill the Supreme Court vacancy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
If elected, what I will do is I'll put together a national commission, and I will ask them to, over 180 days, come back to me with recommendations as to how to reform the court system.
The debate will play out over 90 minutes, moderated by NBC's Kristen Welker. In Nashville, I'm Nadia Romero reporting.
The second and final presidential debate starts at 6 o'clock tonight right here on KPBS. And we've been fact-checking campaign mailers this election season, and tonight we focus on the San Diego City Council District 7 race. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser says it's getting nasty with back-and-forth attack mailers, text messages, and even websites.
Let's start with mailers attacking Raul Campio, the Democrat in the race. His Republican opponent, Noli Zosa, along with a couple outside PACs, have sent mailers that say Campio, quote, has been nailed for 4 ethics violations during his city council campaign. Campio was fined by the San Diego Ethics Commission, but for a mistake with campaign materials, not an ethics violation. The fonts on some of his election materials were too small.
I think the voters are smart enough to know that font size is not really an ethical issue. That's why it's highly misleading.
Zosa defends the mailers.
He was cited and fined, and everything is truthful. So he was cited 5 times for his unethical campaign practices.
Campio's campaign sent out text messages to voters that say, quote, Zosa has been under investigation for illegal solicitation of city officials for money. This refers to a city law that says it is unlawful for a candidate to solicit a political campaign contribution from any city employee with knowledge that the person is a city employee.
Every single candidate is invited to a training on various rules, and they give you a list of like the 10 top do not do's. and one of them is soliciting city employees and city officials for donations.
But it may be more complicated. The city law says it's okay if the candidate asks for money from, quote, a significant segment of the public that may include city employees, which may be what Zosa did. Candidates have been knocked for breaking this rule before. City Attorney Mike Aguirre was fined $1,500 in 2007. Even though the Ethics Commission agreed, he probably asked city employees for donations accidentally. The text also says Zosa's business was sued for civil rights violations and discrimination in 2017. That refers to a lawsuit that alleged Zosa's restaurant Dirty Birds was violating the Americans with Disabilities Act because it did not have adequate knee space, table height, or aisle width. The case was settled with the defendant getting a settlement of less than $10,000.
They throw everything out at accusations and they're seeing what sticks. When it comes down to it, I haven't been cited or fined a single time after all these accusations that they filed against me.
For more details on these mailers and fact checks on claims from other campaigns, go to kpbs.org/election. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
A federal judge wants the U.S. government to help search for the parents of hundreds of children it separated at the border. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us efforts to reunite these families have been hampered by the pandemic.
The government, along with attorneys from the ACLU, appeared before U.S. District Court Judge Dana Sabraw on Thursday afternoon. This was part of a status conference regarding the settlement that was supposed to end the government's family separation policy at the border, which has run in some form since 2017 and has separated thousands of families. The settlement now also covers 1,030 more children who remained in the U.S. after their parents were possibly deported as part of a 2017 Department of Justice pilot program. It was then up to the plaintiffs, like the ACLU and its partner organizations, to find these parents. So far, they've contacted 485 parents, leaving 545 children still without contact from their parents. At the hearing, Judge Sabraw asked the government, specifically the DOJ, to help more with locating parents and share if any of the parents are still in DOJ custody. The pandemic has slowed down efforts of investigators and lawyers to be able to safely find the missing parents, but they say they're slowly ramping up their efforts once again. A rally on Wednesday morning at the San Ysidro Port of Entry criticized the treatment of asylum seekers under the Trump administration.
Even for those families that were able to reunify, and only because of the efforts of other community members like the ACLU that stepped up to defend these children, they're still suffering from that. You know, we hear all the time from the experts, the mental health professionals, how these individuals' lives are going to be impacted forever.
The next status hearing, which will update the number of parents found, is set for December 4th. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
San Diego County leaders are urging everyone to get their flu shot now to fend off a possible twin-demic. As KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us, the county is offering free vaccines to make sure everyone is protected.
We want to avoid the double whammy as much as possible.
The double whammy in question, says County Supervisor Greg Cox, is deadly serious.
The chance that somebody could come down with both COVID-19 and influenza.
Health experts say the best way to prevent that is by getting a flu vaccine. Today's news conference was to let everyone know the county is doing what it can to make getting the vaccine easy, and it's free.
In October and in early November. 6 clinics will be up and running with vaccines available for adults and children ages 6 months and up.
Though the vaccines are free and no one will be turned away, the county says they're primarily intended for people with no health insurance. In a larger sense, the flu clinics are also intended to keep people out of the hospital.
By reducing the overall impact of these respiratory illnesses, be it the seasonal flu, be it COVID-19, that it's also will lessen the burden in our health care system.
The free flu clinics began today. They continue at various county public health centers through November 3rd. Hours and exact locations are available at the countynewscenter.com website or by calling 211. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A new analysis from our partners at iNewsSource has found San Diego County's death toll during the pandemic is 66% higher than officials have publicly acknowledged. iNewsSource investigative reporter Mary Plummer explains.
Lakeside resident Rosie Sanchez died in August at age 81 of post-polio syndrome. Her daughter, Becky McBride, says the pandemic is also to blame. Sanchez relied on daily exercise to stay strong, but when California's stay-at-home orders changed her routine, her health quickly went downhill.
It got so bad at the end because she had no muscle that she couldn't sit in the car because she would sway so much when I would go around corners. She lost all her core muscle, all her muscle in her arm, and was not able to walk or stand.
Her decline landed her in the hospital. She spent a few days at home in hospice before she died. Sanchez is among more than 1,000 county residents who fall into a category researchers call excess deaths. It measures how many more deaths have occurred during the pandemic than you'd expect to see in a normal year. That means it captures all kinds of people who died from the pandemic, including some who had COVID-19 infections but were never tested, while the county's official pandemic death toll only includes people with positive tests. Excess death rates also include people like Sanchez who were never infected but whose lives were cut short. Her daughter tears up at the memories. She says if not for the pandemic, her mom would still be here.
I guess I just wish we could have lived our lives and made our own choices. Because instead we're being told, I have sores on my face from wearing a mask 8 hours a day. And I can't really do a funeral. I can't really do what I want to do for her. And I'm just thinking, this is all so unnatural.
Sanchez's death has gone uncounted until now. A county spokesperson questioned our reporting, calling the analysis premature. We spoke to 8 epidemiologists who disagreed. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource investigative reporter Mary Plummer.
Jill Castellano co-reported this story. iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. San Diego area hotels are awaiting state approval to resume individual meetings, which would be a significant step toward returning thousands of hotel employees to work. Today, the Manchester Grand Hyatt showed off how they've implemented federal, state, and local health guidelines. Hotels reopened for tourists 4 months ago, but the state of California has delayed approval for the individual meetings.
Successful having leisure guests throughout the summer. And so we have taken those learnings and we can now apply them to how we can hold meetings safely.
The San Diego region lost 77,000 jobs in the tourism sector over the last year. The White House has repeatedly questioned the safety of mail-in ballots, but military personnel have been doing it since the Civil War. And this election, troops and veterans appear to be bucking some historic trends. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has the story.
In a year when millions of people are expected to vote by mail, overseas troops were among the first to receive their ballots. Federal law requires that they go out at least 45 days before the election. San Diego County Registrar of Voters Michael Vu has been getting ready for weeks.
This is our tabulation room right here. All the mail ballots will be processed and scanned in there.
San Diego County is one of 11 counties in the U.S. that have over 10,000 military and overseas absentee voters. Vu says there has never been a hint of widespread fraud, though not every ballot comes back in time to be counted. Federal law does make it a bit easier for these voters to vote absentee. For instance, overseas military voters are the only California voters who can return their ballots by fax.
Many cases where we don't know what the status of that military and overseas voter is. Could they be potentially on a ship that doesn't necessarily have a good transmission when it comes down to fax?
Even with the extra measures over the last 2 presidential elections, military personnel actually voted at a lower percentage than other absentee voters, both in San Diego County and nationally. And this election, polls show this bloc of voters is more in play than in previous elections. A Military Times poll in August showed Joe Biden with the lead, with President Trump's approval ratings well below what it had been at the start of his term. Ed Yoakley is a senior reporter with Morning Consult, which has been tracking military and veteran households.
Military families are not unlike the rest of the electorate. I mean, we're seeing Joe Biden do better with older folks and with white folks and with men across the board.
This group has typically been a reliable part of the Republican base, and in some ways it still is. Morning Consult polled veterans and active duty households after a bombshell article in The Atlantic reported the president had called people who serve losers and suckers. Their report found support for the president holding steady. He was still leading among military and veteran households.
I think we've seen with white voters and with men who are sort of the Trump base, not a whole lot has moved their views across the board over the last 4 years.
One thing that did hurt the president in the polls was his talk of sending the military to quell civil unrest or to monitor the elections. Back from Walter Reed Medical Center after being diagnosed with COVID-19, Trump tweeted a video message to military voters.
We got everybody pay increases, 3 of them. There's never seen anything like what I've done for the military.
For most candidates, it's hard to target military voters directly. Regulations make it difficult to hold events on base. Democrat Doug Applegate, a retired Marine, ran for Congress in 2016 and 2018. The district includes the sprawling Camp Pendleton in Southern California, where more than 36,000 people live on base.
I wouldn't go on base. I was asked that on occasion, and I thought that that regulation was well-founded, because I don't think that the military needs to be sucked into politics.
They may not even vote where they're based, making it even harder to target them, says Applegate, who didn't win a seat in Congress in 2 tries. He said these voters tend to be conservative, but not always. And though they may be insulated from the job market,
I think they look at the economy just like everybody else. Is it good? Because active duty military still buy homes. They still live in the community where they're stationed at.
Applegate says national security is also important to military voters. They tend to size up who will do the best job of being their commander-in-chief. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Measure E on the San Diego ballot this election would exempt the Midway district from the city's 30-foot coastal height limit. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says it could lead to big changes in the blighted neighborhood.
Midway isn't the prettiest part of San Diego. The neighborhood is known for big box stores, industrial lots, and strip clubs. Midway resident DK Anyuo says the 30-foot height limit has stood in the way of efforts to revitalize the area. The height limit was approved by voters in 1972 and applies to neighborhoods west of I-5. Midway isn't a coastal neighborhood, Anyuo says, and allowing taller buildings would give property owners an incentive to redevelop.
And it enables us to actually look to include, parks, green space, open land, get creative, like I said, with that design, come up with, buildings and dwelling units that are creative and beautiful and have some sort of, real impact that's positive for this community.
John McNabb is a longtime San Diego activist who opposes Measure E. He says it's a giveaway to developers, and rather than raising the height limit, the city should create a giant park in the Midway district.
But all we have to do is understand that public land belongs to the people, and it needs to be used for the wise use of the people in a way that benefits everybody.
Most of the public land in Midway is owned by the military, which has no plans to donate it to the city for a park. The yes side of Measure E has a lopsided advantage in endorsements, with support from both the Republican and Democratic parties. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
And for more information about the issues on your ballot, you can check out our KPBS voter guide. You can find the link on our homepage at kpbs.org. Judge Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court nomination is moving to the full Senate. To protest, Democrats refused to show up to today's vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee. But Republicans pushed ahead, keeping President Trump's pick to replace the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on track to be confirmed before Election Day. A final confirmation vote is expected on Monday. California air pollution regulators are adding some tools to enforce tough new rules aimed at diesel trucks and ships. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
The California Air Resources Board passed sweeping rules this past summer to eliminate and restrict diesel pollution around the state's ports. Regulators want to make sure the rules are followed, so they're preparing to deploy several tools. California Air Resources Board member Nathan Fletcher says San Diego's communities of color will benefit.
You think about that parent in Barrio Logan whose child is 8 times more likely to have asthma because of the zip code in which they were born. And we have historically placed low-income communities and communities of color in areas with higher concentrations of pollution, and in particular air pollution.
Tactics will include tracking whether trucks move through neighborhoods and using portable emission measuring systems. The Environmental Health Coalition's David Flores called it a win for residents who live near the waterfront or the international border.
Very important technology to be able to deploy in those communities that are already very high emissions and air pollution.
San Diego is already monitoring truck traffic in Barrio Logan and National City, and the port is actively working to electrify its cargo hauling fleet. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Hope you're having an excellent day, and thanks for tuning in to KPBS News. I'm AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez, and here are your weather headlines. As we go through the next couple of days, we will continue to have that gradual cooling trend as we head into the weekend. And of course, at night and the early part of the mornings, some of those low clouds will be across the coast and even in inland areas. We're even tracking the potential for a couple of showers into Saturday night and early Sunday morning as well. Here's a look at San Diego County for tonight. Temperatures definitely refreshing along the coast. We're looking at a low near 65 for San Diego. Across Mount Laguna, temperatures should be near 48 degrees, 57 across Borrego Springs. As we transition into Friday, we're still dealing with that onshore breeze across most of the California coastline. Not as warm across most of California and even into parts of the Four Corners. We're going to have some even colder air across parts of the north central U.S. But let's take a look at San Diego County heading into Friday afternoon with a high near 72 degrees for Oceanside. Across Escondido, a little bit warmer by a few degrees, 76 there. Borrego Springs into the upper 80s. So let's take a look at your forecast along the coast. Here's a quick look at the next couple of days. Again, temperatures will stay in the low 70s for each of the next afternoons. In inland areas, we are in the 70s on Friday, but eventually we will end up in the mid to upper 60s on Sunday and also on Monday. Across the higher terrain, the mountains, here's where we're going to see a couple more clouds as we transition into Saturday and Sunday. And even again, parts of the mountains Monday could be dealing with a little bit of rain in the morning, and that's even possible as well for Saturday night into Sunday morning. Along the deserts, temperatures are going to stay here in the upper 80s for Friday, Saturday, only 80 degrees on Sunday, and then we're getting into the upper 60s for Monday of next week. Back to you.
The San Diego Asian Film Festival kicks off tomorrow with a mix of video on demand, online discussions, outdoor venues, and Twitch live streams. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando previews the festival with its artistic director, Brian Hu.
The coronavirus pandemic forced the San Diego Asian Film Festival to rethink how it would be showcasing films this year. So it's only appropriate that its opening film is all about COVID, says artistic director Brian Hu.
It's a miracle that this movie exists. So the film is 76 days. It takes place completely in hospitals in Wuhan during the 76 days in which the city was shut down. And how these healthcare providers are really making this up as they go along, and their solutions are incredibly powerful and show the persistence of the human spirit and the drive towards healing.
76 Days will stream online, but Be Water, a documentary about Bruce Lee, will screen at a pop-up drive-in.
Now, Bruce, just look right into the camera lens right here and tell us your name.
My last name is Lee, Bruce Lee.
The film provides not just an insightful portrait of the Hong Kong superstar, but also a revealing look at what life in America was like for an Asian in the 1960s and 70s. The second drive-in feature is a horror comedy, Get the Hell Out, which takes the raucous antics of Taiwan's parliament and just adds zombies. A very different Taiwan is featured in The Husband's Secret, a 1960 film that has just been restored.
When I watched it, I was shocked by just how modern it felt. The way that they talk about sex and adultery, it just feels so alive and contemporary.
The Philippines is represented by Gina's Pan, another epic melodrama by Lav Diaz.
They're very slow, they're always in black and white. But what happens is, as you just watch for extended amounts of time, you become lulled into this false sense of security. You enter the Lav Diaz wavelength, and then once he has you locked in, he knows he can do anything to you, including unleashing just unexpected brutality and ways of looking at the behavior of human beings as they're taken to the limits of morality.
Asian pop assaults your senses with a wushu-style Chinese martial arts film called Wild Swords, and with the exuberant passions of anime fans in Project Dreams, How to Build Mazinger Z's Hangar. The film I'm most looking forward to is the latest by Hong Kong's iconoclastic director, Johnny To.
So he hasn't made a film in a few years. And then last year he drops Chasing Dream, which is a mix of mixed martial arts, hot pot entrepreneur movie, a gangster movie, as well as a singing competition movie.
The festival closes with Riz Ahmed in Mogul Mowgli.
And it turns out Riz Ahmed is actually a incredible rapper. So part of the joy is watching him perform.
Once again, the San Diego Asian Film Festival serves up a dazzling assortment of cinematic treats. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: